back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I, of course, am John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. Eric, first off, one thing I have to point out is people are very interested in you, whether it's the background, your hat, what sweatshirt you're wearing. So maybe you should get the fashion piece right out. Everybody's asked, like last one, what was the sweatshirt you're wearing? Now you got another one.
Oh, this is my university when
Yeah,
many moons ago. But I
think
have out of a deference to San Fran Giants fan who didn't like the fact that I wasn't drinking last time. It's
nice.
3 o'clock in the afternoon and I've started. So this is for you, San Fran.
And I went back with the Italian. Yeah, right. We're Giants fans. We all need help.
Wait,
I went
what are
back
you
to
drinking?
the Italian Pilsner from Bevi Benny Brewing Company.
Okay.
It's a 5.3% by volume alcohol drink. It's
I've
pretty good.
Step
Actually.
up my game. All I have is an Oktoberfest fest beer. So you always have these exotic beers. Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so we were joking about this as we were about to start, but this is going to be kind of a wing it because normally we'd be previewing the upcoming game, and we are, but we would probably put a little bit more thought and in depth on this thing. But quite frankly, I'm not sure that Giants fans actually want that as much as they just want to kind of hear what we're thinking, because we're sort of a mirror to what a lot of them are already thinking. So for you, Eric, just your thoughts before we break into the game, but your thoughts kind of on what it is we're going to be doing today, or what we want to accomplish, being that we're kind of in that, I don't really know. Do we win? Do we not win? Do we want to win? Do we not want to win? What do you think?
Well, have you noticed that we get more views on these videos when we're just bitching and moaning?
The more negative, the more they go up.
So we get the ex-players on and stuff, and it's like, but we get the ones where we're dropping F-bombs and stuff, and our numbers go way up. Oh, I don't know. Look, the sad thing about this is this, and again, I don't want to make it too depressing because we're going to get people saying, I don't want to listen to these two guys because all they talk about is doom and gloom stuff.
Right.
But the thing is we should be really excited about this game. It's the Eagles. It's still October. In a normal situation, we'd be going, Saquon Barkley's coming back to the Meadowlands. We'd be going big game, but I personally don't feel it. I think the beat reporters are overreaching on the Saquon thing. I don't think a lot of Giants fans, to be honest with you, care all that much about this. To me, the way I look at it, this is the other kick in the nuts we're going to have to endure. Is again, I think they should have let him go because of the economics and where the team was, but we also knew there was a really good chance he was going to embarrass us at some point. And he may or may not, I don't know. But given the way the season's going, if he runs for 150 yards on Sunday, it wouldn't surprise me. And then you're going to get, a bunch of people going, see, we screwed up by letting him go. So anyways, I'm not into that. Maybe some of our listeners are. That doesn't interest me. I don't know if it interests you, but I'm sort of beyond that right now.
What I think is funny is, and I know he was on the show, so I'll state that ahead of time. He's on the show. I'm not saying he's a friend of the show. He was just on the show when we had Ryan Dunleavy on. Someone asked him, well, should they have signed Barkley? Why did they sign this? Should they have signed? And he said, absolutely. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What Barkley does in Philadelphia is absolutely no bearing on the Giants team itself, where they would be right now. Again, every decision made has a ripple effect of everything that happened after it. Nothing stays the same. If they had signed Barkley, they probably don't sign one of the other offensive linemen that we picked up in free agency.
Right.
If you drafted a quarterback at 6, we don't have Neighbors. Who knows what we ultimately have at wide receiver? We probably have even less. That guy might be playing. It still might be Jones. Who knows? So Barkley was too expensive. Barkley is Barkley, by the way. His last game for the Eagles against the Browns, he had like 45 or 50 yards total. He was not good, and he missed a blitz pickup pretty badly, and he definitely was known to do that for us. It is what it is. I couldn't care less. Do I think we should have signed him? No, absolutely do not.
He's a good addition for a team that's competing. We weren't competing, and maybe Ryan Dunleavy's looking at it from this point of view that look, the ultimate goal here is for the Giants to get back to a Super Bowl. That seems like an impossible task right now, but that's the ultimate goal. Saquon wasn't going to be part of that.
I'm
So
sorry, you're being
why?
serious.
What?
I'm
Oh,
sorry, you were being serious.
yeah, I was
I
being
was,
serious.
no,
Well,
I
I
know.
mean, long term. I mean, if you're
No, I know.
rebuilding,
No, I
if
know.
you're trying, I mean, what's the ultimate goal here? Is not just to get to the playoffs and like 22. The goal isn't 2022 to get to lose in the second round of the playoffs. That's not the goal. The goal is to compete with the 49ers and the Chiefs of the world and win a championship. So in order to do that, obviously we've discussed quarterback over and over again. We'll probably get into it in this, but the question is a running back the caliber of Saquon, and I've argued he's overrated. He was one of the best seasons I ever saw his rookie season, and then he got hurt, and then he got hurt
Yeah,
again, and then he had a really decent year, a really good year in 2022, but then he got hurt. I mean, so he's had two really good seasons, and for some reason, people are it's kind of almost like, I mean, you could make the argument that Odell Beckham had a better career with New York because he was. I think he had three outstanding seasons, three really
sure.
outstanding seasons. Barkley only had two. So I don't get where the love for some of these guys is coming from because they certainly aren't associated with championships and they didn't really play at a high level for an extended period of time. Now, again, his rookie season, oh my goodness, I still watch clips from that because it was so good. But he just isn't the guy that a lot of people think he was. And worse is he's had all those injuries, serious injuries too, lower body injuries that again, I don't think you'd be surprised, or I would be surprised if we hear by the end of the year he's got another ankle injury or he's got
Oh,
another
sure.
knee injury or something because that's just been his mo to date.
I was expecting. I still am. He's going to have a slowdown. They used him a lot early and quickly. He had a ton of touches against New Orleans. He had a ton of touches against Green Bay in week 1. He's a guy that when you give him a lot of touches consecutively, there comes a stretch where there's a small injury. Maybe it's an ankle, which seems to happen pretty regularly, something else. And he has 3-4 games where it's really low production. And it always seems to be after a lot of use. His best games are when he gets really big explosive plays, but the total number of touches is down, or at least the number of carries are not super high, meaning he's getting things in the passing game. He's doing some other stuff in space, which has helped them out. But we saw that in 22. We had that big game against Houston where I think he carried the ball like 33 times or something like that.
Yeah.
He went downhill after that going
He
forward.
wasn't the same after that until the playoff game.
And
So it was like the
and we
whole
hardly
second half
used
of the
him.
year he wasn't good. And I prefer having a running back like Tyrone Tracy a couple weeks ago who put up big numbers, but it was consistent throughout the game. It wasn't the one big run that you're talking about.
Right,
So the thing
right.
with now,
Skews
some
the
of that was
numbers.
related with Saquon was related to the state of the offensive line, no doubt. I mean, our
True.
offensive line. But in order to get the offensive line we have now, we had to give up Saquon. There are a couple of people on the website who say that's not true. I don't understand their argument at all. The math doesn't make sense to me. There are some guys that say the contract that we gave Saquon was the same we gave to Devin Singletary. No, it wasn't. So I don't know where they're getting that. So it's the same thing with the Xavier McKinney thing. So if you wanted to get Brian Burns, you had to get rid of Xavier McKinney. So I think they made the right moves in those areas. I don't want to spend too much time on
No,
Saquon, but that's what the press is focusing on because there isn't much else with the Giants right now. I will say this because I think we're going to get into this. There are storylines with the Giants that the reporters are not touching for one reason or another right now. The other, they're really not paying enough attention to the quarterback situation, like you and I have talked about.
right.
Is it time to bench Daniel? That hasn't even been brought up as far as I've seen with the press yet. I'm not even talking about the Q&As. I'm talking about articles. But I think there is a strong rationale because we're going to pat ourselves on the back here. But I think there's a strong rationale to move on from Daniel at this point for a variety of reasons. But big picture, no one's really talking about the elephant in the room that we talked about earlier in the year and is going to start rearing its head as we get further and further into the season if we keep losing is Daboll safe? Is Shane safe? Belichick's still out there. Vrabel's still out there. You've got a couple hot stud offensive coordinators that are going to be looking for a job. The guy in Detroit, for instance. So there's a number of things that should be in my mind be discussed more than the return of Saquon Barkley. But that's the flavor of the week right now, and everyone's focused on that.
Right. And then circle back real quick to one thing you said about, because I mean, I was joking about the Super Bowl thing. Of course, that's ultimately the goal. But so always try to keep it, there's what we talk about here, and then there's your own personal life outside. Job related for me is I do a lot of stuff that's where it's incremental things that I do. So I'm looking ahead at what I'm doing that will accomplish certain things in the next X number of weeks. But then what does that mean 2 months from now, 3 months from now? How do I build on those things further down? The Giants need to get back to the playoffs, but what it needs to be, and what you were talking about, people keep throwing a Barkley thing in there, and that might have made we make it, kind of, I guess at this point it's 22, but it would also be very similar to 81. We made the playoffs and then we missed at 82, totally fell apart in 83. 84 brought about a different piece and they made the playoffs and they barely did in 84.
Right.
85, we build again. We're a little bit further. We had a couple of games.
Better team.
Could have probably won a few more games. We could have been a 13-win team that year. I guess you could say it could go either direction, but there were more chances that they kind of blew than it was that they stole one. And then 86, we saw win the Super Bowl. Kind of saw the same pattern again, 88, 89, 90, similar thing. So what you're talking about and what Barkley might have done in theory by some people's ideas, we'll just get to the playoffs. I want to make the playoffs, but I don't want it to be we made the playoffs, but it was just duct tape and baling wire and WD-40 if you saw the movie Fletch. You don't want to just be doing that to make 1 year and then next year you just completely fell apart again. So Barkley to me doesn't bring anything that makes this team build and continue because one, he's got a limited amount of time really in a wear and tear situation. He's had a major injury. He's had a lot of carries. Shane went out of his way to mention that in the Hard Knocks pieces,
right,
when you hear him talking about how many carries Barkley had in college. So they were already kind of mindset wise, they're telling you what they're thinking, but it's not wrong. It might be justifying their decision, but the truth is still the truth. So we needed to get away from that, but I still think we have to build. And this is where I'll argue with some of the fans that just don't want us to win this year. You got to start winning games and have seasons that are consistent. If it's 5 wins, 3 wins, 6 wins, 2 wins, that's not consistency other than you suck. They have to start really kind of doing something where you're building blocks. If every year's a teardown, then technically there's never been a building year. It's just constantly tearing down. So we'll get past that.
Well, but you got to have the regime remain in place too.
That's a good point.
So I mean, if you're going to keep losing, you're going to keep changing regimes, and you're going to be in this death spiral that we're currently in. So I want to win too. That's one of the reasons I kind of I want to move on from Daniel too. Is what are we doing with him? I don't see the upside right now, other than I think it gets back because I saw your reaction on to the announcement on Wednesday that non-announcement that there's not going to be no decision at quarterback. Very predictable. We were what we were discussing wasn't going to likely happen, but you were like, "What are we doing?" Again, I think they still have a shot at being in this with sticking with Daniel. We'll see. We'll see what happens on Sunday, and we'll see if we have another game where we don't score 10 points. So
let's turn kind of our focus. I'm going to stick right where you left off, and then we'll turn the focus into that. That thought process, though, and so I'm going to ask you: do you think really? I mean, just put aside everything we talked about.
Yeah.
Just you thinking. Do you really think that that's kind of what they're thinking? That they still have a shot with Daniel, or is it they think overall they have a shot? And Daniel, of the 3 quarterbacks, he's the one that physically can run some of those plays that they need that the other 2 really can't, and that they think the rest of it is even. Because I can't see the reason I'm asking this. I can't see how you can keep saying as an organization that Daniel can when you just don't score any points.
Yeah,
Unless
I don't know. I'm where you're at. So I'm exactly where you're at. That's why you and I are in agreement on this isn't working. So try something else.
right.
Because what's the definition of sanity again? It's
I know.
doing the same thing, expecting a different result. I don't understand this. The only thing I can think of is they have made the determination that Daniel is better than the other two options. He may very well be. He may be, in fact, but I would move on because again, there's the risk of the injury to him. If he gets hurt seriously again, he can't pass the physical in March, we're screwed. So if some people are blowing that off, that's nothing's minor. That's not a little thing. And I had to look up because I had to, we'll get into this too. Do you remember who was playing left tackle when Daniel hurt his neck? And who
Oh,
gave
sure.
up
It was
that
Josh
sack?
Ezeudu. It
It
was
was
Josh
Josh
Ezeudu.
Ezeudu.
Yeah.
So I think that's in the back of Daniel's head right
Yes.
now is Josh Ezeudu was playing left tackle, and he was the guy that got him. I mean, he was getting crushed by a number of people in that game. So, but Josh was in tears after that game. So there's the injury thing, and then they get to what you're talking about, which is, does he give you the best chance to win? I'm thinking they think that, but if they do, that makes me nervous about the coaching staff, number one. Um, and again, I still wonder if they're coaching scared at this point in terms of, it can get worse if we put in Locke, if it can get worse if we put in DeVito. We're just trying to survive another year till we get that quarterback that we can use, but we're just trying to survive at that. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know what the other rationale is at this point. Is they're just trying to hold on at this point and just get into 2025, or they legitimately think they can get back into this.
How?
That's something I can come up with. If you can come up with something else,
No, but I'm going to go. How ironic would it be if the reasoning was Jones is the one who most likely or is least likely to give up the big turnovers, the constant turnovers, where the other two are really risky. Like Locke
yes,
is a major risk. You never know what you're
yeah.
getting with that dude. And he provides no running back. It would be funny after Jones's career started out as this guy throws touchdown passes, but he fumbles and throws interceptions like there's no tomorrow, to a guy who doesn't turn the ball over that much except for the random dumbass. I
Well,
don't know
yeah,
what you were
you could
thinking.
argue he just cost them the game with the
Oh, agreed.
turnover against Cincinnati, though.
So if your fears are the other two are a potential turnover risk constantly, that would be really ironic that the only reason that we keep Jones in there is because they think where he limits you offensively scoring, he keeps you in games at least by not turning the ball over, which is that is coaching scared.
Well, let me ask you this. Who do you think would get more of a positive fan reaction on Sunday starting at quarterback when they ran off the bench? Daniel Jones or DeVito? In
Oh,
terms
it's
of the
DeVito.
crowd reaction.
Oh, it's
They didn't
DeVito.
know, crowd not knowing who's running out into the field. Who do you
Yeah.
think gets the more excitement
Oh,
out of
yeah.
the
It's,
crowd?
it's DeVito without
It's
question.
not even questionable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They would be like, "Yay!" And I think they would give him a chance, even if he threw an interception on his first throw. They
Sure.
would groan. They'd be, "Oh!" But again, I think they, like us, have kind of said, "Enough is enough. The 6 years is enough. This isn't working. Anything's got to be better than this. Something's got to be better than what we're going through right
So
now."
what do you think of, and I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, Dan Duggan responded to a number of folks posting questions specifically about the injury clause for Jones. And his response was, I fully don't believe
I
that
saw that.
Mara and the Giants are making any decisions based on injury.
That's
They're,
stupid. That's
yeah, I
stupid.
don't understand that.
That is, if that's true, that's stupid. And you know what? I guarantee I will make you a promise, everyone listening out there. If Daniel Jones gets hurt, I'm gonna not they care. I'm gonna let this team have it. Like that. Talk about the stupid. I want to again. I want to be Al Swearingen from Deadwood here. I want to let
Nice.
the expletives fly. If they come out of this year with him tearing his ACL or injuring his neck again, I'm going to lose it. That's why another reason he's got to be benched. If they're not thinking that, then they're morons. They should be thinking that. Again, you have a quarterback with a two-time neck injury. He's coming off an ACL, and as you've pointed out repeatedly for the last 2 weeks now, he's running around like a fullback out there.
Yeah. Oh,
Now, I
yeah.
give him a little bit of credit that he's playing tough, but he's doing some things that he's taking some chances out there that you're like, oh God, it's only a matter of time here. And now Andrew Thomas is out. So if they're not now, the Giants didn't say that. Dan Dugan's saying that, but he
Right.
seemed to have a pulse on the team. So when I read that, I was like, oh my God. So yeah, I'm going to let them have it. If we come back on Monday and the first thing that we have to talk about is Daniel Jones is hurt, I'm going to lose my blank,
Yeah. And I find it's a weird thing. One, I don't know why you would let that even if that's what you thought as the Giants organization, why would you let that information slide out? It's not like you had to defend it. It's not like a rumor came out that said the Giants are thinking of benching Jones because of the injury clause. And then they came out like, no, we don't care about that. It's literally it was fans asking a reporter a question who's giving information that he's kind of already picked up on, that they're not going to make a decision based on that. And that they continually seem to be saying they believe he will be the quarterback unless they feel they have a better chance of winning with somebody else, which either means you put together a quarterback group that is so pathetically bad that Jones is the best no matter what. Like I said it during the summer, he was the best option compared to him and Lockett, and he was. I mean, Locke hasn't done anything to say he's better. But now we've lost games. He's not moving the needle. And now you're getting to that point where you're like, okay, the rest of the league is kind of, at least the NFC, has fallen backwards, and the division has fallen backwards. And we're still at the bottom of the division because our guy can't put up any points. So now that it doesn't really matter if you feel the system is the system, then put one of the other guys in and let's just see what happens. But to continue to wheel him out there and then say the injury thing is not a concern, I guess I'm confused, or they truly believe that they're better than they are.
Or Dan is speculating, but the way his tweet was worded, it sounded like he knew something. So who knows? Look,
That's how I took it.
we're going into this game week 6. Or wait, we're week seven. Week 7. Have another beer. We're going into week 7, and the Giants have thrown 2 passes down the field that have been completed. Is that in
20 plus
one
yards?
game,
Yeah.
Right? Am I forgetting something? Was
no,
there
I
another
believe
big
that's
passing play this year so far? It was a 2.
We had the
40-yarder
on the sidelines, and then I don't know if we count the second touchdown pass. That was over 20 yards. So,
but long story short, it's 2024. You turn on the highlights any week, and you see even the worst offenses completing passes down the field.
Sure.
So Daniel Jones, 6th year behind this offensive line, decent running game, not great, but decent running game. He's got decent receivers, especially when Malik Neighbors is playing. And we've got like a couple of completions, and we're getting close to the midway point here. It's ridiculous. So I have moved on to the point where I'm not willing to say Daniel Jones, and I said this last Monday or Tuesday. I said this last Tuesday. I'm not willing to say Daniel Jones is the best quarterback on this team anymore. I'm not willing to say that because I saw glimpses of decent play from DeVito last year. I even saw glimpses of decent play from Locke last year in the brief time that he played, ironically, against the Eagles. He played in the Eagles, and he beat the Eagles last year.
Yeah. Great comeback,
he had a great
pass
drive
at the
end of that game. So I'm not even willing to say that anymore. I want to, everyone knows this because who followed the site. I want to root for Daniel Jones. I just can't do it anymore. I don't have it in me. He sucks the life out of me. I said that last Tuesday. I'm done. And I mean, do you think we're going to score 25 points in this game? 27 points? No, I expect us to score 13 points in this game, maybe, and that may be optimistic. Because it's at home, and the offensive line now is, we got Ezeudu at left tackle. It's, I don't have a good feeling about this. But if you had somebody else at quarterback, I might be more enthused about this matchup. But I just don't.
So before we switch to the specific game itself, one last thing on the quarterback. I'm going to ask you, and then I have my own answer already. And I don't care which quarterback, so you can say which one. if you took Jones out of the equation for the first 6 games, right? Everything else stayed the way the game was. So like nobody was different on defense for the other team. We didn't get anybody else back. We just took Jones out and threw a different one of our other quarterbacks in. Which quarterback? And then what would the result be? So do
That's
you
a
think
really good question. I don't think we beat Minnesota. I think we underrated Minnesota at the very beginning of the
yeah.
year. But I think you can make a strong case, given the way those games went, that he certainly would have had a better chance this last weekend. I think you could make you have a better case against we would have a better chance against the Cowboys. And then the Commanders game's a little difficult because of the way they controlled the ball and what happened with the kicker in that game. So, but I think you can make the case we could have 2 more wins. Now people are going to be out there. Well, they might have thrown an interception and it might have been much worse,
Sure.
maybe. But I'm going to say we would have 2 more wins right now,
So
and that's
I look at and I'm assuming you're probably going either one, or which one of the quarterbacks do you think, if you said sub them in? I would, me personally, I say you could have played DeVito. I think I would have played DeVito over Locke if he was going to start. I think at the very least we would not be any less than 2-4. That's for sure. I think we score more points than we have, because literally the areas, a lot of the times what Jones takes 11, 12, 13, 14 plays to get down the field to then still kick a field goal. We saw with DeVito last year again. And before anybody jumps on the thing, I have not at one point in time said Tommy DeVito. I was going to say Danny. Tommy DeVito is going to be a long-term starting quarterback in the NFL. But I saw him rally the Giants against a Packers team that made the playoffs. I
right.
saw him
That's what I'm
put some.
talking about.
So there were other games when he looked really bad, but so did the entire team. Dallas doesn't count. They overmatched us from the beginning. And it's a division foe who knows you so well that when you put a rookie in there, a rookie free agent, by the way, in there, you don't really expect him to do super well. He still had more touchdown passes than Daniel Jones. I think right now he would have 8 to 10 touchdown passes with this team, with this offensive line, with the receivers that we have. And you just wonder, is he a guy that might have gotten Neighbors the ball down the field just a little bit? Those couple of times that Jones either didn't throw it or threw it late, like the Neighbors catch in the Cowboys game when he was wide open. If you hit him in stride, that's possibly a touchdown.
That's what I was thinking, is like, how many missed plays were there with Neighbors that they might have, that Locke or DeVito might have hit. So I just, again, look, I'm going to sum up my comments on this, because they could play them and they could be just as bad, but to me that's something different. I know what we're doing now doesn't work, so why do we keep doing it? I would rather go on and see the other guys succeed or fail, and then could fail miserably, but at least it would be something interesting to watch. I'd have a reason to turn on the TV and watch the game and see how did the new quarterback play. And I know the old mantra is fans love the backup quarterback. I understand that. I grew up with that. I understand that. But we don't have the quarterback we have right now isn't working. So I just don't understand. And then there's the risk of the injury. So look, we're not going to the Super Bowl this year. We're not going to the playoffs this year. So I would rather at least have another dreary season be a little bit more interesting than just watching Daniel Jones play for 17 games. I just don't want to see it anymore. It's boring to me. It's painful. It sucks the life out of me. It's sometimes it's humiliating, because again, you got fans laughing at you. It's just
and if it's that way for us, what is it for a young guy who just joined the team, who's expected to be a big time player, Neighbors?
Mm-hmm.
How demoralizing will it be in week 10, 14, when you continually pile up losses and you're sitting there going, but if you just threw me the ball, like I was open.
I beat my guy. What are you doing throwing to Wandale for on a 3-yard pass? You know, I'm 50 yards downfield. I'm wide open, and you won't throw the ball to me.
And that's a thing that I'll finish on this subject with this. I know there are some folks that want their pound of flesh, and their pound of flesh is now leave Jones in there for the rest of the year. The Giants coaching staff and management deserves it. I don't agree with that. I understand your point to a degree. I think it borders on derangement syndrome, though, when you're just so mad at this one guy that he's the lightning rod for everything. Here's the thing. Your opinion on Daniel Jones and whether he should sit or not sit and what should happen is not going to change who owns the team at the end of the year, no matter how much you want to do that. That ultimately is what we keep hearing about. Really, what you're talking about is you want the ownership to change. Just like the Cowboys are not changing ownership. Washington finally did, but that was more because of a whole bunch of other stuff than just because of bad play on the field. The thing with Jones is this. They've tied to him for some reason. I would much rather what you just said was, we don't know necessarily. They don't know if they put another that it won't be just as bad. I'd rather be just as bad with a guy who makes $790,000-$800,000 than just as bad with a guy that's got $160 million contract overall and is potentially going to cost us $40 million next year if he were to get hurt. I'd rather take my chances with the other guy because at least, and I said it in the other one, and I know I thought it was funny and somebody else thought it was funny, so I'm going to say it again. He looks like walking depression. When you see him, nothing inspires you anymore, especially at home. He just looks like a guy who's waiting for the thing to go bad.
Right.
And he's usually the reason it does. Yeah. So you just mentioned something a minute ago. Josh Ezeudu is not going to bring any more confidence to Daniel Jones than what he had with Thomas there. So if you've got a guy who struggles with confidence at home and you've got the guy who got him hurt last year now playing left tackle, this is a recipe for passes being thrown at people's feet within 2 seconds of the snap, with him watching the rush and running when there was no reason to run. This is a very bad setup. And if it starts badly, it's a snowball down the hill.
Well, I had to laugh. I don't know if you picked this up. So Daboll, when he talked about Thomas being hurt yesterday, he kept saying, I think he said it 3 times, maybe 4. He said, I feel terrible for Andrew. He kept saying that over and over again. But he said it so many times, I started thinking he's projecting here. He's really saying, I feel bad for me.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this really sucks.
How are we supposed to make this work at this time? And he kept saying, you can't replace Andrew. So, which is true, but I'm not sure you want to go public with that. Yeah. Because again, we know Josh is a little bit sensitive. I mean, again, he felt really, really bad last time he got last year when Daniel got hurt, and he was in tears after that game. And I think he takes this hard. You root for a guy like that, but you got to have some mental toughness too. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how this plays out. So I'm rooting for Josh. He's a good guy. It would be fantastic if he comes and plays. And our new offensive line coach has done wonders with these guys. And you and I are talking about, regardless of how the rest of the team performs, it'd be great on Monday if you and I are talking about, wow, the offensive line really came through. That'd be great if that happens. But what you're talking about is just as likely to happen. So
are you surprised at how they're handling the situation, that it seems like it was destined? It's either going to be Ezeudu or Illuminor. Neal doesn't seem to be in the discussion to be left tackle, even though they mentioned maybe trying him. He's barely in the discussion to be the right tackle. I'm a little concerned about how there seems to lack a ton of confidence at all in Neal.
No, I'm not. Look, and I've been consistent on this for a while. Once the season started, once it became clear Neal missed the bulk. Again, people have to remember, Neal missed the bulk of training camp,
right,
and the preseason. Once they decided to go with the 5 they had, I said on this podcast, we'll probably not see Neal again this year unless somebody gets hurt. I said it. I said that this is it for him.
Sure.
Not for the Giants, but this year we probably won't see him again. And the problem with him, the way the training camp went, he didn't get the practice at any other position. That's why I never went along with those people that said moving the guard, because it doesn't work like that. It does, because he did it at Alabama. You just don't take some guy who hasn't taken a snap at guard and hasn't taken a snap at left tackle in years and then just put him there. So I figured, he was going to be the right tackle back. If something happened to Illuminor, the only way he plays this year, in my opinion, is if something happens to Illuminor, or Josh is so bad that they move Illuminor to left tackle and then they bring in Neal. That's the only way I see this playing out. And what they want to do right now, there is an argument to be made right now saying, whether you agree with it or not, we don't want to screw with two positions. The line is playing well. I'm not arguing this. I'm saying this is where they're
No,
coming.
I got you.
The
I got
line
you.
is playing well. We don't want to move the right tackle too. We want to keep everybody in place and just butts with the left tackle position. So as of right now, the preference is to keep Illuminor where he is. And Illuminor said that. Illuminor said, I prefer to stay at right tackle, but I will play where they want me to. Everyone's going to say that, but he's admitted he'd like to stay there. So their strategy is to have Josh come in and play. But you could tell based on their comments that they're not even completely sold that Josh can do that. So they said, they basically came out and said, we're going to start off Wednesday, see how he does, and by Friday we'll determine what the lineup's going to be. So it's not instilling a lot of confidence in you. Again, and Giants fans have a good memory with bad games against the Philadelphia pass rushers terrorizing our teams, even with Eli there. So I mean, so it's, well, even with Phil Simms there, so we can go back to Phil Simms. So it's not instilling a lot of confidence that it might get to the point where you just say, we're going to leave a tight end over there and just help them out, because that'll really limit the offense. But that might be the best thing that you can do at this point. So they may decide by Friday they may switch Illuminor over there and start Neal at right tackle. That's where we might be. But so to answer your question, I'm not surprised by this, but I think people need to read the transcript or listen to the video of Brian Daboll on Wednesday's press conference. You can go to Big Blue Interactive. Nice.com and read the transcript or see the video, and he breaks down the logic behind it, and it makes complete sense. But you can also see that he's kind of thinking aloud. We've got to have contingency options in case Ezeudu can't handle it. So they know that this is if you want to criticize the Giants again, they kind of went into the season hoping nothing would happen to Andrew again, which is a little risky because now this is the fourth time in 5 years that he's gotten hurt. So he had a healthy 2022, his all-pro year, and he's been hurt every other year. So 4 out of 5 years. So they took a gamble with that, hoping, because they didn't, their fallback, they didn't really have a strong fallback there. They have a fallback at every other position. They've got one at guard, they got one at right tackle, they even got one at center, but they don't really have a strong fallback at left tackle. And I don't know if a lot of teams do, but the Giants certainly don't, unless Ezeudu comes on and is playing really well.
So a couple things. I agree with pretty much everything you said. It doesn't change the fact for me, though, that it's pretty disappointing that that's where they're at with Evan Neal.
Oh yeah.
He should be, first off, he should be starting at right tackle based on where he was drafted, what we expected. Injury and other stuff held him back. But now you're not even ready, because quite frankly, the better move is Illuminor to left and Neal coming in at right tackle, because Ezeudu's not really a tackle. We've already known that. We're forcing him into that position. And you actually got Illuminor originally to be a swing. He could be the guard or tackle. You were hoping Neal would be healthy and Illuminor would be the guard, but that didn't work out that way, which is why we ended up getting Van Roten as well. So the fact is, they're just not really ready to commit to anything. Neal shouldn't need all this extra practice. I'm sorry.
They don't seem to think Ezeudu's a guard though, which is weird.
Which is
odd.
They
didn't practice him at guard this summer. So this is the second coaching staff that's done this. I mean, in terms of offensive line coaching. Yeah. So they've been playing him at tackle, and they didn't play him at guard. Did they do that out of necessity, or did they look at him and they said yesterday? They said, we like his feet, we like his ability to play there. So you and I may think he's better at guard, but they don't seem to think that. So
I'm worried about. Yeah, no, I'm just worried about the fact that I feel like we're making too many excuses for Evan Neal's. What they keep saying and what the reality of the situation is, to me, are two completely different things. Either you really think from a technique standpoint, he was really effed up, like completely effed up, and you're trying to break everything down and go back. That makes sense, because then missing the off season really complicates that factor. So, and that's probably true. But here we're this is week 7. He's been practicing for weeks. Yes,
Well,
he's not with the first team. I get that. But you know or don't know whether or not, if he's not capable of sliding into right tackle right now and you throw in Illuminor to left, and I know you don't want to move 2, but are you weakening the most essential portion of your offensive line by throwing in the backup tackle when
right.
you have a full-time guy starting tackle who has played other positions that you can trust can
Right.
play out there instead of moving Neal in? That's where I'm a little wondering what the
But
hell's going on.
that's where you're kind of diverging from my previous comments where you said I agree with what you're saying. I'm not arguing one or the other. I just understand both positions. So start from the position that they don't want to move Illuminor for the sake of they don't want to move him because they don't want to screw with 2 positions. So if you accept that, this logic makes sense. But you also have to throw in the fact that and I've argued this for a long time and I've gotten a lot of blowback. Evan Neal does not look like the same player to me at the pro level that he did in college. And Saya said the same thing. What I mean by that is he didn't look his technique didn't look this bad in college. So that makes me think what your comment is spot on. It makes me think it's pure speculation that, and remember, Neal's not only been working with the Giants coaches, he's been working with other coaches in the offseason. So I
Right,
wonder
right.
if he's just got a bunch of different technique. He's overthinking this. He just looks, you know how we've talked about Daniel Jones being mechanical?
Sure.
It looks like Evan Neal when he struggles is almost too mechanical. He looks all out of
Like he's thinking it and not naturally
yeah, because
flowing
people
to
are
it. Yeah.
saying, well, he's not athletic enough to play tackle in the NFL. That's just bunk.
No,
That's just
he's
BS.
very athletic. Yeah.
He's not a bad athlete. He's not. So, and we've had a lot worse athletes on the New York Giants who had just as much athleticism or less athleticism. David Deal wasn't a hell of an
No,
athlete.
Jumbo Elliott
Even
wasn't.
Jumbo Elliott wasn't a hell of
Yeah.
an athlete. So I don't buy that. When I watch Evan Neal struggle, it's his technique to me seems all messed up. So I think they're trying to do that. So in a way, I and others have said until this disaster with Andrew happened, have said in a way this is a good year for Evan in that he can just work on getting his fundamentals back. Now, the other thing that you mentioned, which a lot of other Giants fans are saying too, is this. I think you got to understand this is once the season starts, the coaches are in combat mode. They're not thinking about player development at this
Sure.
point.
Sure.
And there's not a lot of practice time. So you've got your starters are trying to get ready. You got 3 practices before so you got a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice. And the Friday one, can be, and one of those practices can be very light depending on how banged up the team is. So, and the other backup players are playing the scout team. So I assume Evan's playing the scout team right now. So there's not a lot of practice snaps going on right now that's what training camp and OTAs and all that other stuff for. I'm not saying there isn't some of that going on, but there's not a lot of time for that. So that's when people say there's all this practice snaps and all these there's not a lot, the week goes by very, very fast. I think fans would be shocked at how little practice there is now, even in the summer. But because of the collective bargaining agreement, there's so few added practices, but there's few practices, period. In OTAs, you can't touch, you can't physically engage with
Right. No contact.
so the lineman can't even block in OTAs. So the way the league has evolved, which stinks for the players, especially linemen, is you can't develop them as quickly. I'm starting to wonder if the best way to develop an offensive line, honest to God, is to kind of avoid them in the draft, except maybe one or two, get maybe one a year and maybe hope to hit on them, but to build more through free agency at this point, like we did, and not spend a bunch on it players, and get the veterans who know what the heck they're doing and have already been through the ringer with other teams. So it wouldn't surprise me if Evan Neal doesn't pan out here. It wouldn't surprise me 3 years from now if he's a heck of a player for somebody else. But his growing pains happened with us. And he went, that's why I'm saying maybe free agency is the best way to go with this. Because look at even the guys that we got. I mean, Van Roten and Illuminor and Runyon, these weren't high profile guys, but they're
Right,
doing,
right.
but this is the best offensive line we've had in years.
What
And so maybe that's the route to go and get the mid-priced free agents, maybe draft somebody. But look, one of the guys that you and I are most interested on in this offensive line is Kubis.
right.
He wasn't even drafted. So
And that's what I was about to say is one of the things I think, and it's not really specific to this preview of the Eagles game show, but I would start looking at there are some positions in the NFL that you can get away from. Like if you're just good, period, go ahead and draft that guy. First round, second round.
Okay.
Offensive lineman, though, once you get past that, he's a superstar first round guy. He's just got all these physical talents. Then you just go find guys that are very specific to the system that you have. And I think the Rams do an unbelievably good job about finding guys like that. I think the 49ers find guys that are very good. If you take them out of there, they might not do so well with other teams, but they do well with the system. And I think you start getting like undrafted free agents like Kubis or somebody else that you say, this guy, for the kind of things we want to do, we can mold him. He could work as long as we've got the stud pieces on the other side. That's great, because you can't have 5 all pros. It's impossible. You're just not going to be able. You wouldn't be able to afford those guys.
Well, and remember, you just said unless he's the superstar guy. Evan Neal was the superstar guy
coming out. See, now
he's
that's
the superstar guy.
That's the thing I will say about technique for Evan Neal. It's very difficult to tell whether his technique has completely fallen off. He was a superior physical talent on an Alabama team. The thing that bothers me with a lot of the Alabama offensive linemen is they fail in the NFL. And it's usually they overmatch a lot of those they're playing. I mean, you look at Leatherwood, guys on he was on like 6 teams and he's gone. Robinson was another one. Really has never lived up. He got a big contract at one point, but has not played up to it.
You can even go farther back in the past with the Alabama linemen.
Oh,
too.
Yeah. And so, but when you talk about, and I want to move now away from that just for a second, but when you talked about he's not the worst athlete, where he is light years ahead of the 2 guys you mentioned, Deal and Elliott, who were technique and physical, and they were very good at what they did. Flowers was a guy that of a similar body size did not have the athleticism that an Evan Neal does.
Well, he didn't work. He was lazy.
Well, there's that, but I mean, if you just looked at
saying that, we've actually had reporters come on and tell us that.
But I mean, even coming out though, like he's physically similar size. He's a very big dude. He was not the athlete that Evan Neal is. Evan Neal, if you saw any of his training workouts, this dude is like jumping up onto stacks of stuff. He's doing splits. He is very athletic and nimble. Something is disconnected from my physical, like we talk about Jones, the physical, innate, natural, I'm going to do this, to the, I need to put my hand here, I got to back up. It looks like he's just completely thinking things versus his size.
And some people that are listening to us right now are going to say, well, he didn't do all the athletic tests and he was hiding stuff. Look, he might not have tested as well as you'd hoped he would have been, but the guy's not a bum athlete. So that's always been a comment to me about he just can't do it. He's not. Now, that being said, it wouldn't shock me if they do move him inside to guard and he ends up being a better guard.
Sure.
So because like you love to bring up the William Roberts thing, which
absolutely
is perfect and is actually a perfect analogy because he could end up being that kind of guy. So some people are out there are going to say, well, do it now. Well, number one, they don't have a crying need at guard right now. But number two, he just hasn't had any. If you're going to do that, you've got to start in the summer, in the spring, in the summer. And people are going to say, well, why didn't you do that? Well, remember, he was hurt. So he couldn't do any of that. He couldn't do that in the spring and the summer. So people keep saying, well, you keep making excuses for him. Well, he has had excuses. So, I mean, the guy was hurt. So
this offseason was a little weird.
Too much time on him. But it's going to be interesting against the Eagles what the offensive line. If this team's going to have any chance against the Eagles, the offensive line can't fall apart. If it falls apart, then we don't have any chance because Daniel's going to get all. Daniel's been having problems with the offensive line being okay. If the offensive line regresses, we're going to get even worse Daniel Jones.
And he struggles with Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia has been a weird sort of for him. It's a
Struggles with
physical.
it. Philadelphia struggles playing at
Well,
home. He struggles
everybody.
throwing the ball down the field. He struggles
I
walking
should have.
across the
I should have
street,
just
chewing
listed the
gum. He
ones
can't do.
he doesn't struggle with, which apparently is
He's got
Washington.
relationship problems with his wife. I mean,
The You did mention something else though that I do specifically now with the game that I am concerned about because I actually think you're right. I think we're going to have to go this way. And the thing I'm concerned about it with, if there's been a big negative for Daboll, period, like if you just want to pick one big negative from this year, it's this particular thing for me. He has overthought things before even seeing what the other team's going to do. He's assumed what the other team's going to do, and so he lines up that way. We went big 3 tight ends often, and that was a major drawback against Minnesota because it backfired on us.
right.
The way they played us, it wasn't what he expected. So in this particular case, you just mentioned it, we're probably going to have to go multiple tight ends. We'll probably go a tight end to that side. You can see that coming.
But wouldn't you do that?
It's not that I wouldn't do it. It's the fact that he's already been doing it in almost every game that we've been playing. That's with Thomas on the field. Now you pull Thomas off. Now you're going to get even bigger, which means we'll probably go 3 tight ends more often. Instead of just 2, we probably go 3. Now you've limited your targets even more. Jones is a guy that you can't limit his options to because he's already limits himself to who's my first read.
Well, maybe it is though. Maybe Daniel will do better. Some of this is tongue in cheek, so don't take.
I know.
But maybe Daniel, it's easier for him if he's got 2 guys out. Pass pattern, he doesn't have to think too much. So I mean, I'm half joking on this stuff. So I mean, if he's not going to throw, you went through. I applauded you last Tuesday when you actually went through and said, you looked at the plays and you said who was open and who wasn't, but the other team sees it too. If he's not going to throw down the field, you're already kind of running a 2-man route anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's tongue in cheek.
But you're not wrong though. But you're not wrong. And the other thing that you just said though, and this is partly why I almost disagree with going with this style, is that, well, you said 2 things. The first part is they kind of had to, and it limits because it just we limit things. When I say playing scared, it might not be playing scared. We just confine things to keep somebody from making a mistake. I really believe that's kind of a lot of what we do. If you do that, and you just said it, the defense knows this.
Yeah.
Cincinnati proved that. They are a crappy defense. Not against us. Not against us.
They're coached. They're a well coached. The well coached part came back and bit us in the ass, by the way. But yes.
But they're a weak defense, and yet, what did they do? They knew what we were going to do.
That's the coaching part.
They were bringing the safeties back up. The linebackers didn't drop very deep, and they were waiting for us to run multiple patterns, parallel and stop, and Jones waits till they're facing him, and then he throws it right at the guy, and the safety comes around, knocks it down, or he throws it behind him. But it was always within 7 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So when people were like, we should have run it more. Well, guess what? If they're already thinking that on the passing game, meaning they're not dropping any deeper than 11 to 12 yards back, that means the safeties are within 12 yards of the line of scrimmage. You want to run, you're running into 6, 7, 8 people in the box, basically, if you start doing that. The only way this works for the Giants is that, and this is where you get, oh God, this is scary, is Jones has to run. Jones has to be the runner every now and then so that they can't key on the running back or Jones. We lived on that in 22 and it worked. It's not working as much now because when Jones does keep it, it's not he's running free for 7 or 8 yards and then runs out of bounds. He's running around a corner and he's lowering his shoulder into people that are waiting for him. And that's where we're at. But that's the only way that opens the running game enough for Tracy to then do it, because our passing game, which we both said in the summer would be a de facto running game, the short passing game.
Yeah.
It's not that. That is the passing game. It's not even a de facto running game.
In order to do that, though, you've got to back people off, like you talked about. And they're not backing people off. So it's what I said on Tuesday. The defenses think that Daniel can't or won't throw that deep, so they're taking chances. So when he has thrown deep, other than the one game, he can't do it or he won't do it. He just, he just can't connect with them. So at least they haven't gone full Dan Reeves. I know fans out there probably hate when we go back and look at look at the past. You and I like to reminisce about the
Yeah,
80s,
love it.
90s and stuff.
I
But when
miss that.
Dan Reeves was here, you could tell he hated Dave Brown. He used to actually kind of, remember he had that comment, oh, he's no Aikman. He just his own quarterback to the media by saying, because somebody brought up, well, Aikman does these things, and he's like, Dave, Dave Brown's no Aikman. But they ran Rodney Hampton into the ground
Yeah.
against 9-man fronts. And I saw a comment this week. Somebody said, well, Rodney Hampton was overrated because he
Didn't work out in the offseason and other stuff.
which is true, and he did kind of slow down as his career went on. But his career, the second half of his career, the first part of his career, he had a quarterback and an offensive line. The second half of his career, he had an offensive line, but he had no quarterback. And Dan Reeves would run him into the line over and over and over and over again. That's why I'd love to get Howard Cross on to talk about those old days. We used to joke on BBI back then, because that's when the site started, that the Dan Reeves' favorite pass was a 2-yard out to Howard Cross. And that was their offense.
Yeah.
They'd be like, why are you even running that play? So the reason I brought this up, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, is they could go, if they really, really had no faith at all whatsoever at Daniel Jones, I suppose they could just run. They haven't decided to do that. They did, the arguments out there, some people said, why didn't they run more last week? And maybe that was thought, but they didn't put up big numbers against Cincinnati on the ground either. Tyrone Tracy did great on many of the times on his own. He wasn't getting like fantastic run blocking.
Right.
What you were saying, again, they were all crowded up at the line of scrimmage. So
I feel like for this game, so we're getting Neighbors back. We think it seems like it's trending in that direction. So you're gonna have Neighbors, you're gonna have Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm a little concerned. I'm curious if you saw the play, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Talking Giants, Bobby Skinner has shown this play on X a number of times. It's an RPO play where Jones has the ball, fakes the handoff, and it looks clearly like the pass was originally intended to go to Hyatt, and Hyatt moves into his man and then starts to come inside. The defender puts his hands on Hyatt right away, and Hyatt stops running almost instantly and now just stands there watching as Jones then turns and then throws the ball away to the other side of the field. But he originally is looking to Hyatt.
Yeah.
It just looked
I didn't see it, but I saw the reaction to it. And if he's doing that, then he's going to screw himself. I mean,
yeah, it looked like he just gave up on the play.
He's going to. I've talked Hyatt up a ton of times on this site, but if that's what he's doing out there, and I haven't seen enough. I have not seen him on a play-by-play basis. I'm not going to cherry pick plays, so I'd have to go back and watch the all 22 and watch him every route that he runs. But if he's doing that, then he's screwing himself. So a lot of people had the same reaction after this game about Hyatt playing soft. So when enough people say that, then that makes you that's likely what happened. So if he's going to continue to do that, then he's not going to work out in the NFL. He won't work out here, and he won't work out someplace else. I still think he's got tremendous amount of talent, but if he can't run through contact, then defenses are going to know how to deal with him. So, but again, I will say this: I would love to see him with another quarterback. I would love to see.
There's also that
quarterback.
There's also that. Yeah.
So. While we're here, because I was looking, because we're recording right when the injury list. So today, Burns, these are the ones who did not practice. Jamie Gillens, the punter, looks like he's going to be out again. So Burns did not practice. Adoree Jackson now has a neck injury, did not practice, and Dexter Lawrence did not practice. Now, both Lawrence and Burns said yesterday they expected to play, but it's really disconcerting that both those guys now two days in a row have not practiced. That means they're going to, at least at the best, they're going to go into this game both banged up. And limited Singletary, Darius Slayton. Good news is Wan'Dale is fully practiced after being limited today, and Malik Neighbors fully practiced. So the concerns injury-wise, we have Thibodeau still on IR. Aaron Thomas is on IR, gone for the year. Those are two big losses. And now we got our probably arguably our two best defensive players are banged up. So and Philly's a weird team. So they haven't been playing well. They've had some injury issues. they're getting healthier at some places. They're getting less healthy at other places. But you look at the players they have on that team, they should be playing better than they can. And we tend to be the get well team for them. We've been like that for a decade. So they haven't been lighting it up, but they can light it up. That's my concern in this game is, again, they got a left tackle who's out, but their AJ Brown's back. We don't know about what Goddard. You and I were talking before we came out. We don't know if Goddard's going to play or not.
Yeah,
But they got the other wide receiver. Hurts can hurt you with his feet. And I will say this: a lot of the interviews with the Giants coaches aren't worth listening to. Wink Martindale used to be a guy worth listening to, even though I turned on him in terms of his ability to coach. But Shane Bowen's another guy worth listening to because at least he's honest. And he was talking today about how the Giants have not done a good enough job against stopping quarterbacks from scrambling. And he was talking about play against Cincinnati, but he was saying they know that they've got to do better because other teams are picking up on it, and they got to focus on this with Hurts. So he knows it. He's telling them. So, but it's just refreshing to hear somebody. And he admitted he made the bad or the wrong call in the Cincinnati game on that play that the quarterback ran for the touchdown. He said it was a bad call on his part.
It's one thing when Jaden Daniels does it, or Hurts, you would expect. Burrow going 40+ yards for a touchdown.
But somebody get him.
But it was the week. It was the week before. There were 2 different runs by Geno Smith, another guy you don't expect to be running all over the place, and he picked up really good yardage. So it is something you have to take. But the other part of it is that when your rush is solely coming from the outside, which right now it is. Dexter could get up through the middle, but quite frankly, when we get into a pass rush situation, when you're the only guy in the middle and you line up the way that you did, we do line him up off center. We don't put him right over the center. He's either on either side. If you wash to one side and the other guy isn't kind of containing, he's rushing, that lane is there.
Well, that's what I've noticed. It hasn't been so much the edge guys. And again, I have to go back in each play, but the one against Seattle, Dexter got washed inside. He got pushed inside.
Yeah.
And the one against the Burrow play, that the alignment was just weird. It was only one guy to one side of the field. And it was this huge
Didn't
gap
like that
there.
at all. Yeah.
So, but I agree. I will say this: don't always blame the edge guys on containment. Sometimes it's the inside guys who didn't stay in the rush lanes, and the quarterback runs through that gap in the inside. So you have to go back and rewind those plays and see who did it. And when I rewatched the Seattle game, which we could have lost, it was Dexter. It was like, damn, Dexter, you screwed up on that play. And thank God. I mean, he had a monster game that game, but he screwed up on that. In my mind, he's the one who screwed up on that big run.
And the thing you have to remember too, with a guy like Dexter, he's what, 340, 330. He's definitely 3+. Right. Like, he's playing a lot of snaps for a guy of his size. So yes, he's had a lot of production early. That's going to wear down, though, as the season goes on. If we do not have somebody else that can eat up some snaps when he can just get off the field.
Right.
And you can't have him playing 3 downs, 3 downs, 3 downs, 3 downs, 3 downs, first down, 3 downs, 3 downs, 3 downs. Without it, sooner or later, by the end of the game, he's going to be worn out because we don't have you mentioned it before. If it was the last episode, that one of the biggest losses is A'Shawn Robinson.
Oh yeah,
Roaches has done nothing to inspire me at all. Really disappointing. He was much better with Tampa than he has been with us. Chapman is unbelievably undersized. He's a cool story, but he is wickedly undersized. If it comes to putting a body on a body, he's going to get pushed out. Now, if it's a pass rush situation where you can pin your ears back, get him out there and let him rush through, do some stunts. That would be great. Anything else though? If it's third and it's kind of in between, could be run, could be pass, you really can't risk putting him out there because he's a guy who's just going to get buried. So you got to be really careful with the Lawrence thing. Going back, I checked on the Goddard thing. I've checked on 2 different sites. They believe he's going to miss multiple weeks. So the assumption would be he hasn't, as far as I can tell, he hasn't been listed as out, but Philadelphia's expecting that he'll miss multiple weeks.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at
both teams are banged up. Both teams are banged up. Philadelphia is going to be favored, and they should be favored. You're going to get a bunch of asshole Eagle fans coming up the pike, filling up stands. I want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah, please.
I hate the Eagles. I hate them. I
Tim.
despise the Eagles. I went to school. You can see I went to
There you go.
school in Washington D.C. So I have a special hatred for Washington Redskins slash Commanders slash Washington football team. For everyone who keeps
Thanks.
yelling at me
Thanks.
about the Redskins, because I grew up with they were the Redskins. All right. So I have a special dislike for the Redskins because they were all around me. Any fan out there who lives in Dallas, who lives in Philadelphia, or lives in DC knows what kind of special hell it is to be around the media and the fans of another NFC East team. So if you're in Dallas, you live in Dallas as a Giants fan, you probably despise the Cowboys. If you're in Philadelphia, you can't. But most of the Eagles fans I've ever met in my life are just assholes. They're just
I'd agree.
assholes. I
I'd agree.
hate them. I will meet Washington fans that are fine. I will meet Dallas fans that are fine, but I can't find any Eagles fans that are fine. They're all assholes. I can't stand them. I don't like them. I don't like that team. I don't like that city. I hate this team. So I just wanted to get that out.
Nice. I
Get
like
that
that.
out there.
Well, I'll say this. I can't stand Philadelphia. It's weird growing up. So I grew up in Vermont, and for those who don't know, the Giants were if you lived in Vermont, you got the Giants. The way it was divided up was CBS was the NFC, NBC
Yeah.
was the AFC when growing up in the
Yeah.
80s and stuff. Our local team in Vermont was the Giants, and even when they were bad, that's the game you would get.
Right.
They would sometimes cut away when the game was being blunt, and it happened a lot early on in the 70s, and then in the 80s it switched. But the Giants had training camp in Vermont at St. Michael's College in the 1950s. So then St. Michael's is right in Winooski, Colchester, Vermont, and that's where they would train. So that became the de facto team was the Giants. However, during that time, as I'm growing up, Cowboys are America's team, so they're everywhere. So I grew up in a smaller town in northern Vermont, and there were like Cowboy fans like crazy. 49er fans didn't come out of the woodwork until the 80s. There were
Right.
Cowboy fans, there were Steeler fans,
Right.
there were some Dolphin fans, but it was mainly Cowboys. Hated the Cowboys. Philadelphia, I didn't like them, but I didn't really care. I mean, other than the fumble, it was just they weren't that great either. But then they made the Super Bowl in '80, and they lost. Um, we get LT, and things start to change. So now Giants beat up on the Eagles for a while until Buddy Ryan comes in, and then there's a few seasons where some odd things would happen, and the Giants would lose a game to the Eagles that they really should have won, but they were competitive. It's not until recently, though, that the Cowboys, we get beat by them fairly regularly, but quite frankly, they are such a shit show most of the time, and they lose more often than not when they're supposed to win big games that I don't care about them. It's Philadelphia that I do care. They tend to not just beat us, but they win ugly games. They beat up on us. We look pathetic. We get injured. And we almost look scared when we go to Philadelphia now.
Yeah.
And their coach is the biggest asshole on the planet.
Oh, he's a turd.
Did you see him bitching out the
Oh,
fans?
what a
I'm
little
like,
punk. He's a
I'm like,
little
you have time.
bitch.
And then, I like that. We gotta go with your little bitch award each week. We gotta start doing that.
A little bit. But he
Daniel,
is.
we got
What a
Daniel,
little
and then we got
asshole.
Sirianni, and we got put those
Yeah.
two together.
Can you imagine if that guy was your coach? I'd be like,
Well,
Jesus
even
Christ.
better. You act like the asshole that you normally do. You
Yeah.
bitch to the fans, and then what do you do afterwards?
He
when
bitches. He's a
When
little bitch.
no, it wasn't even that. What do you
Oh.
do when you go meet the fans or the media for questions? You bring your kids so they're in
Oh,
your
I missed
laps.
that. I
Oh
didn't see
yeah,
that. I
and it
didn't
was
see that.
called out. Like there were people like, and you brought your kids to avoid being asked really kind of tough questions. He has
Oh,
his
he
kids.
used them as a shield, is
He
what
had
you're saying. Oh,
his
I missed
kids
that
in the media
completely.
press
Okay.
conference.
Oh, what
Oh,
a dick.
he is the absolute most smug person for somebody who doesn't coach the defense or the offense. He is Joe Judge, but with a shitty attitude actually during the game instead of the bizarre nature after the game. I swear to God, it's the worst. It's so amazing. We can't lose to this team. I hate them so
Think about
much.
this. There's a really good chance there's going to be coaching changes at the end of this year in Philadelphia and
And Dallas.
And yet those teams will probably finish above us. And we may keep and I'm not saying this is why we should get rid of Daboll, but we may keep our coach, and the teams that finish above us may fire their coaches.
Well,
That's
think
how
of it,
far.
but think about this. If you want to do some sort of like I don't want to say conspiracy theory. That's not what I'm looking for. Motivational factor maybe for the owner, who does sometimes seem to be driven by weird appearances or feelings that he suddenly pulls in from elsewhere, and I'm going to make a change because of it. Those two teams may fire their coach.
Right.
We have a coach that's out there looking for a job, potentially looking for a job.
Right.
And he's a guy with massive ties to our organization.
Right.
Are
We
you,
talked about this.
you just lost Barkley to the team that you hated. And you even said, I don't want him to go to Philadelphia or something like that. And then he does.
Yeah.
Do you want the chances of Belichick going to Philadelphia
That's a really
or Dallas?
Good point. That's a really, and I'm going to throw that again. Look, I have not advocated for against or for Belichick.
Correct.
In either direction. I can make arguments in both cases. The only thing I will mention on a negative point here, and again, I'm not saying they shouldn't hire him, is he's all over the place right now. So you can't, if you're really into watching football, it's hard not to hear him come up, and he is a joy to listen to. But man, he's gotten old. He is he's old. He just looks.
His girlfriend's
old.
pretty young now.
Sounds old. He still can coach probably. And what?
His girlfriend's pretty young. I don't know if you've seen
I
it.
know.
She's like 24.
I showed that to my wife and she went gross.
Yeah. He went from defense to offense real fast.
No comment on this right now. But now you got me.
Yeah, so
thinking
sorry.
of the girlfriend.
He's gotten really old really fast. Sorry, my bad.
But he's gotten really, so he's just, so that's the thing that if he does come here, and everyone knows he wants to break the Shula record. So if he does come here, how long do you have him? Does he still relate to the younger players? Is he past his prime? People have said yes, said no, but I'll tell you, the man still, I could listen to him all day. The biggest get you could ever get for this show is somehow if we were able to get Parcells or Belichick on here. Boy, that would be a hell of a show for us, because Belichick would love to talk about the old days. I'm not talking about just the Super Bowls. He'd go back and talk about two-gap defense and the platoon system and all that stuff with us, and he'd love it. That's the only thing I worry about with him. But you're spot on. So we know through Hard Knocks that Mara thinks along those lines in terms of public opinion, PR.
Yeah.
So that would be a big splash. At least in his head, it would be a big splash. It would be a big splash. The football world would be like, holy crap. And I will tell you this. Anyone who's followed Belichick at all, even in New England, knows he loves the Giants. He just has never gotten over his love for this team. And it's funny listening to him now. He's not going to go to the Jets.
Oh God, no! Oh my God, no! No. That's.
I don't think he would go to Dallas. I mean, of course, I never thought Parcells would go to Dallas, but
I think he would, only because, and you said it right there, and that's why. If you've noticed, where has Belichick gone? Even briefly, where has he gone?
He's followed
wherever Parcells had been.
Yeah,
Jets, and then he leaves the Jets. He goes to the Patriots. He takes over the Patriots for Parcells. Parcells goes to Dallas and doesn't have as much success as he's had elsewhere. This would be Belichick's chance to go to another team that Bill went to before and do something Bill didn't do. They are a potentially built. They're very thin,
right?
But they have playmakers on both sides of the ball.
But at the same time, they are locked into some contracts right now.
True, but he wants word on the street is he wants a team that has a built-in quarterback already. He doesn't want to start from scratch because, again, he's old.
But that works against the Giants. That
is definitely a negative. But Julian Edelman has come out and talked about him on, I believe it was Colin Cowherd's show, where he basically was telling them, if there's one team that I think is the Giants because of this. And then he talked about how Bill waxed poetic about the Giants. And when they would go into the stadium, even playing the Jets, he would talk about his Giants days. And you can tell the reverence he holds for the Giants. And that's also a place, by the way, that Parcells used to coach, even though Belichick was here. He wasn't the head coach. It would be a chance to cement his legacy one step further over Parcells. I do believe there is a thing there between those two guys.
Yeah, and the other thing though, I throw this. I know we're going all over the
That's
place,
all
but
right.
since no one wants to talk about the Eagles. Yeah.
Nobody wants a prediction.
I will have to say that it was particularly enjoyable to watch Dallas lose the way that they lost. And I kept thinking again, the offensive coordinator for that team was a hot head coaching prospect. And I know the downside is that the Giants have gone to first time head coaches and have gotten burned by them now for like four in a row now. That's the downside. That's why I think Belichick is actually a reasonable shot here. Is the reason what you mentioned, and we've talked about this before. But looking at how Detroit was just designing plays against Dallas the other day, I kept thinking that would be fun to have. So I just throw that out there.
Well, and one thing I'll say to what you just said too, that's another example though, that sometimes what you think you know is only correct with the situation that's
no, it's
in.
true.
Because Jared Goff was written off by anybody else. He was a throw-in in a trade that literally the Rams said, listen, we'll do some of these things and stuff, but you got to take Goff though.
No one saw that coming.
Yeah.
No one saw that coming.
Yeah. And that was partly how the Lions were able to say, you're going to pay Stafford's contract, so take it. The Rams are like, fine, you got to take Goff, and we're going to give you him with his big contract. So it worked out for both teams. Obviously, the Rams got a Super Bowl. The Lions, God help them, they probably should have had it last year, and I picked them to go to the Super Bowl this year. I just think when you look at just situations, that's something to consider. So let's kind of bring it back to where we are. I don't know if we want to get into predictions on what's going to happen, because I think, quite frankly, I think we both kind of feel like it's.
Well, if we had a quarterback who could score, I would make a decent prediction, but we can't score. So
I don't think.
Look, and the other thing is, I'm terrible at this prediction shit.
Well, yeah, no,
since we started this podcast, if you're out there betting, bet against me, because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Well, with the Giants, it's really hard because it's hard to separate what you really want to have happen versus what you really believe will happen. It's usually somewhere in the middle. The problem is the heart pulls you in either one of those directions. There's we both thought they might get blown out in Seattle. What happens? They win. Right. There's I thought they would score a shit ton of points against the Bengals and win a high scoring game, because I didn't think the Bengals could stop. Because I didn't think the Bengals could. Yeah, you got one touchdown.
Yeah.
And then people will point out, well, they lost because they missed field goals. That might be true in the grand scheme of things, that ultimately is true. But there are so many steps throughout the game that you could say, yeah, but it wouldn't have even been a game if we could have scored touchdowns.
No.
So I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking there's two mindsets that I have. There's the game itself, which I kind of feel like Philadelphia is going to find a way to win. I just think that they're physically better than we are. We're a horribly tackling team, by the way. We're a bad tackling team. We do a lot of weird soft stuff. We drag people down. We don't really hammer people. These guys are going to hammer on us. They enjoy it. They're kind of a dirty team, and we're a soft team, and that scares me. The dirty stuff against a soft team is bad. I think we're probably going to lose. What I'm more concerned with, or what I'm really kind of thinking is, if you go through the second quarter, we're at home, and Philadelphia, let's say Philadelphia is up 17-0, and we just haven't moved the ball at all. Do you yank Jones? Does he get pulled out of the game?
I've been on record. I would already pulled him. I would have pulled him.
No, I know you would have, but I'm saying if this is happening, do you think Daboll does?
Too, yeah, I could see them doing that. The other thing, I usually don't like doing that, because then you put the guy you're bringing in an impossible situation too. But yeah, sooner they get Jones out of there, the better. The sooner they get him out of there because he can't play, and the sooner they get him out of there because of the injury issue. I'm not going to be shocked if we're talking on Monday that he's hurt.
He got hurt.
He's hurt.
The
sooner he gets out of there. So I was going to actually, it's interesting. This is where you and I are in line with each other. I was going to ask you, do you bench him if we get blown out in this game? Is that it? So
the answer to me is yes.
Yeah. So, sure. how long do you keep this going? You know, if we lose this game. So somebody said on, I think it was Ryan on BBI said, well, you guys, what is the game threat going to be like if Jones wins this game? And I didn't type this, but my reaction is like, so what? We saw it with Seattle. So if he plays well and we beat the Eagles, yay. But the following week he's going to lose. I mean, that's just the way he's been now. So that's that. I
So,
want to root for him, but I can't do it anymore.
so that's
Again, the definition of insanity is expecting something else when the same thing keeps happening. And
so
I'm
that's
done.
that's a great question. So I'll answer it back to the fan base in general. I don't really ultimately care what Daniel Jones does
No,
or doesn't do in a positive sense. I care that the Giants win. If Jones plays well, what is well? We keep lowering the bar on well. I've already seen
it's
I've
true.
seen I've seen what we've considered now as his best, and I don't think that and I'm guilty of it. I actually thought his best would be more just because of the surrounding pieces. But what I've come to realize is his best, period. It doesn't matter whether you put the superstar out there instead of Hodgins, or we go 4 deep instead of 2 deep and a mix of everybody else, or you put Tracy in Singletary instead of Barkley and Breida. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, he's limited by himself. It doesn't matter who's out there. So his best is middling across the league. At best is middling across the league. So if he plays well, and I'm assuming by well you mean he might throw 1 or 2 touchdowns and he doesn't turn the ball over and we win 20-17, I'm thinking we could have won that game with Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock then. That's what I'm thinking. I
I'm
just want to
even
win.
talking though if it's even better than that. I'm talking. Say he throws for 300 yards in his first 3 touchdown game since his rookie season. I'm still. I'm not gonna make anything out of it. I'm done with that. So if he did it 4 or 5 games in a row, then
That's
yeah,
different. That's a different
then
story.
I'll say
But even then,
sure.
I'm
But
done for the yeah.
I mean, I'm just so done. I'm just so done.
Remember what we said.
I'm tired of you know, fool me once, shame on. You know, we're on like fool me 120 games or whatever. Well, I don't know how many games he's played, but whatever. It's just
Here's
bleh.
here's the thing we talked about the other day when we talked about trades. Slayton, but specifically Ojulari. What did we say? Sell high. What I want to see, I want to see a 300 yard.
Ojulari.
I want to see a 300-yard game. I want to see 3 or 4 touchdown passes,
Two
and
by Slayton.
I want 1 or 2 contenders from the league that are Super Bowl contenders to lose their quarterback and become super desperate and offer us something for Jones, and we take and we sell high.
Oh no, no,
And
no.
just sell them high, sell
No,
them high,
no.
baby.
We're
Any
not
pick.
fortunate enough to do that. The one thing I will say this though, you brought up, and we'll probably be talking more about this as the season progresses because there's not going to be more interesting things to talk about. But we should start thinking: are there other options to get a quarterback other than the
Yes.
draft? And that could include free agency, but it could also include the trade market. So usually that's not a good idea. But as you brought up with the golf example, and you know, if somebody like Belichick did come here or something, are there any quarterbacks out there that might do better in a different situation than they're doing someplace else with a good line, with neighbors, that type of thing. So again, I'm not saying don't draft somebody, but I'm also saying there are other ways to skin a cat here, and there may be something else out there that we should probably start looking at those situations around the league. We should probably start who's available, not just free agency, but who might be available for trade. I would not give up, you know, first round picks or anything like that, but sometimes you don't have to.
So here's the thing. One last thing I will say. I totally we should absolutely let's stick with that. Here's the other thing to think about though. When you said, well, if they get blown out, would you pull Daniel? I absolutely would. I know you would. The thing to look at though, as other people have mentioned, and as I have said, why we need to keep trying to win is that the rest of the division is coming backwards. What you almost want to have happen then is this. If we beat the Eagles, we want the other teams in the division to lose, because then that means we've knocked off a division foe. We're still in it, and I don't care if it's Jones or who's the quarterback, we still have a shot at winning the division because everybody else is falling back. If we lose, though, if we lose to the Eagles, then we need to see the other teams win. Washington needs to win. Philadelphia would have won. Dallas is on a bye. So then you go into next week. If we lose to Pittsburgh, we want everybody else to win, because the sooner the division starts to stretch away because everybody else falling back keeps us, then any pretense of why are we doing this with Jones goes out the window. And if you continue to put him out there at that point, then I gotta say, then overall, then I'm gonna start going with the whole stinking from the head down kind of deal is a true thing. The second the division becomes, because you can't give up when it's still winnable. That's the problem some people don't seem to understand.
Well, that's the answer to when we've said why haven't they done it, benched him already? Because the division actually still is winnable right now. So in other words, that's the only thing I can come up with. So you've said why are they doing this, and that's the only thing I can come up with is they think it's still winnable. The quarterback change isn't the right thing to do right now because they could still pull this out. I don't believe that, but I'm a fan sitting here in my house, and I don't have skin in the game in this. So,
Yeah,
so it's easy for me to say that. But
I,
that's the
I
only thing I can count. So, but you are 100% correct. As sad as this is, that if you want changes to be made, that it may be better if the Giants lose, the other teams to start winning. So they, like you said, there's no pretense here. And then again, you get a better inkling of the mindset of the franchise at that point. I agree completely.
so keys to the Giants if they're going to win, obviously is the left tackle. Whoever is the left tackle has to, I would assume, needs to play well. Uh, the
Jones.
Jones or whoever ends up being quarterback during the game. You can't turn the ball over. We're not in a position. We never score enough. We can't turn it over. And then I would think on defense, uh, Burns, even if he plays, you got to assume he's going to be somewhat limited. Like he's not playing at his full strength. Maybe I'm wrong. He did play pretty well against the Bengals, but people were saying he was hobbling after the game,
He
and
said he was
that's
pretty bad
concerning.
after the game, and he's got a groin, and you got to figure this is going to be nagging him for the rest of the year unless they could get him to the bye. And so, in a way, if this was a game where they had some, if they didn't have to win, you almost want to sit them right now so to get them healthy. But they're so desperate now, I don't think they can do that.
So I don't know. I guess I'm looking probably a 30-13 Eagles kind of victory. I kind of feel like it's just going to fall apart in the second half.
Oh, we're going with scores. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds about right. I'm gonna be lazy. It just sounds like 13. That
that's
would
a
be a
lot of points
win
for
for
us.
that'd be
I
for
mean,
a win for a team that scored 7 last week, I suppose. That means our kicker would rebound. So
yeah,
you've got him hitting the 2 field goals he
we
missed.
probably missed the extra point.
Missed. So that would have been the amount of points we scored the previous week. Um, I will say this. I'm actually more, this is going to sound weird. I'm actually more curious to see what the Eagles are going to do. So this is much more important game for the Eagles than it is the Giants. So if the Eagles come in and lose or look bad but win, then that's way more damning on the Eagles in my mind than the Giants at this point. I'm actually more interested in seeing how the Eagles. I will say this. I do like the way our defense is trending, but unfortunately, we've lost one edge rusher, Thibodeau, and now our second one is really hobbled, and our third guy, Dexter Lawrence, is now hurt. So the three guys we built the front on are now hurt, or either not going to play or are going to be limited. So we may not even. I mean, theoretically, all three might be out. We don't know. They say the other two guys say they're going to play, but we don't know. Neighbors will be back, so it'll be interesting to see if that helps the offense at all. Like the Tyrone Tracy play, we'll have to see how that shakes out with Singletary. So there are things interesting to watch, and I'm really interested in seeing Josh Ezeudu. Is he going to completely be a mess like he's been to date, or did Carmen Brasillo actually work some miracles with him and can he develop into a decent player? So it's a
Yeah,
tough
that's good.
opponent. So we'll see. I'm just not looking forward to this game. If Tommy DeVito was playing, I would be a little more interested in this game. But I
It, if I'm the one person that I think should be
Locke
the
playing. I'm sorry, and even Locke too. I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. The one person that I think should be most concerned about what happens in this game isn't Daniel Jones. It's not Brian Daboll. is actually Joe Schoen. If Saquon Barkley tears it up, and I mean just tears it up,
Yeah, he might.
You got the fans jumping in, and they're all
Yeah.
Barkley, Barkley, Barkley. Philadelphia fans will be there,
ESPN will
giant,
be
and
talking
everybody's
about,
going
yeah.
to be talking about it.
The whole nation will be talking. Sports
And
nation will be
and you
talking.
know it's the one thing that John Mara didn't want to have happen is Barkley to leave and go to a team in the division. That might be the one big nail on Schoen, because clearly this was Shane's call on whether to pursue or not pursue. I think Mara would have signed off on them spending the money.
Oh, John Mayer made it very clear he was not happy with this whole situation. And you actually made the smartest comment on this podcast. That would be a bad thing, I think, for Shane with Mara. Yeah, that may be the best thing that we've said on this podcast. Yeah, because it was very clear in Hard Knocks that he was worried about it before he left. Didn't
Right.
he make a comment about I'd hate to see him go to the Eagles
Oh,
before it
absolutely. Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
And
And it was
then
because they were kind of cocky, thinking he might go Chicago or somewhere else. And then it turned out to be Philadelphia.
yeah, and I want everyone out there to be clear, because based on our earlier comment, I still think they should have let him
Oh,
go. And I
absolutely.
still think Saquon can have a great year. So that may be confusing some people out there. What I'm saying is he wasn't the right fit right now for the New York Giants, especially given where the Giants' weaknesses were. So
Sure.
this team didn't win with Saquon Barkley except for 2022. This team was not going to win this year with Saquon Barkley and without the offensive line improvements. So you had to pick one or the other. And I've always said the reason why we've always struggled in the last decade is our lines have been so bad. At least our lines are good. Now we know the problems of the quarterback position. But look, Tyrone Tracy looks like he's going to be a decent player for us. I mean, again,
This is all 100% about John Mara, a guy who wears his giant love on his
yes,
sleeve.
yes.
He makes it very obvious, and it's not just giant love. He has love for some players, and Barkley was one of them, because he was popular, because he was a fan favorite, because he supposedly carried himself a good way that they want. And it bothers him that a beloved player leaves, and it doesn't matter what Barkley could have 2,000 yards this year. If he runs for 41 and 37 against the Giants, it's not going to bother Mara nearly as much. If Barkley
Yeah.
runs for 1,100 yards, but 400 of them came against 2 games against the Giants, that's going to be a real problem for Joe Schoen.
Yeah, because he's going to listen. This is one of the problems that Mara has. He doesn't use his head sometimes. He uses his heart, and he listens, like you're talking about, he listens to the noises around him. So that could get really ugly, because you're going to get a bunch of, again, sports jocks, all on Monday morning quarterback shows about, oh, did you just see what Barkley did? So yeah. So that's a really smart comment, and it could happen. That would make everything just awful, which means that'll probably happen.
No, that's the fear.
It's probably going to happen.
Behind closed doors, they're probably like, listen, I don't give a shit if Hurts throws for 500 yards. Barkley never leaves. He never let him. I don't care if you tackle him every time he runs out in a pass pattern. Just tackle him. I don't care. He's not touching the ball.
And what if it's a game-winning play? What if it's a game-winning play, a dramatic play in overtime or something like that? What if it's, hopefully he does one of his things where he runs out of bounds, before and he causes the screw up. We'll see.
Again, I mean, I know I'm adding a little bit to it, but it's not far-fetched though.
No,
I think Schoen is safe minus this. I think it would have to completely fall apart throughout the rest of the year for Schoen to be a problem. His draft class has been pretty good. They've done a pretty good job with some of the free agents. Thibodeau is still kind of, and then Neal is, but that again, they were high-ranked players coming out. You can't blame the GM, because it's not like he reached into the 3rd round and pulled the guy to the 1st round and said, "No, we believe this guy." He took a high-ranking guy.
Yeah.
But optics mean a lot to Mara, and it's not all the optics, because if it was, like you said, he listened to the chirping. If it was, he'd be hearing all the fans boo the shit out of Jones, and he'd bench him. It's the optics or the sounds that match his feelings. His feelings are, I really liked Barkley. I wanted to keep Barkley. So if you hear the fans saying that or saying we should have kept them, now that confirms your own personal belief, confirmation bias. So
right. But why are the Giants 2-4? Is it because Saquon Barkley's not here, or is it because of the quarterback?
Oh, it's because of quarterback.
Exactly. So, Mara, use your fucking head.
But that's my point.
Use your fucking head. I mean, but he's
Mara
not using
likes
his
Jones,
goddamn
though.
head.
That's one weird problem. His heart holds a spot for him. Please, for
But
those,
why? He
I
had
don't know.
two
So
good years.
because there's some people on BBI that believe it's a
Why does
let's just
Mara
say they
like?
think he fits the guy that some people say he fits the kind of guy that they would want to have come home and marry their daughter.
Right.
Okay, so
It's the
I'll leave
same
it
thing
at
with
that.
Daniel Jones. Why does he like Daniel Jones? Why does he like Saquon Barkley? Hey, this is the thing is that drives me crazy is you'd think he would have learned from his father about some of this stuff. You know, his father had to go through some growing pains. His
Oh,
father had to,
absolutely.
he had to go through this, and
They
you'd
were
think he would have
they were
learned something
forced they
from
were
this.
forced George Young. George Young was forced onto them by the NFL.
Right. So you'd think, again, I think he means well. I just don't understand. And I know we're never going to have him on at
I
this
do want to
point.
try, though.
I
I
know
mentioned
we're
it. I
never going to have
want
him
to
on,
talk to him. I
but
want to ask him.
I mean, it's just, and look, he owns the team. He's entitled to do what he wants. I understand that, but he's losing his fan base. And Wellington couldn't lose his fan base because of the time and place the nation was at. It's not 1970 anymore. It's not 1980 anymore. It's 2024. There's way more options out there. The demographics have changed. Everything's changed in this country. The social media's changed things. The life has changed. It's just not the same. And people are not going to keep tuning into this crap. You and I will, because we're old farts and we grew
I'm a
up with this
glutton.
stuff.
I'm a glutton.
Yeah.
I love the Giants. I can't help it. I admit it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, I never pretend I'm not. I'm being honest, which is, I don't want to say it's rare that I'm being honest. I'm being honest that I think they're going to lose. I used to do that intentionally. I would say that they're going to lose. And in my heart, I knew if I said that they'd win. Now I'm saying it because I really do expect that they're going to lose because I keep saying it. Daniel Jones looks like walking depression. When you see him on the sidelines, you just look at, and it's almost like whatever just bad happened on the field and they came off, it's like he expected that's what was going to happen. And
Yeah.
I don't think, and then we'll wrap it. Forget week 1 of last year. That was we drove down the field. There were some penalties and then the block field goal. Everything fell apart after that. They still, and it kind of reminds me of where we are now, right now. We were still kind of in it with a far less talented roster. We were still in things when we had the game with Seattle. And we shit the bed at home. We scored 3 total points. He throws the pick 6. Daboll throws the Surface Pro kind of in his direction or whatever. Jones is not, and then they got injured later on, so I know there's a lot that happened in between. But the look that he had on the sidelines after that is the same freaking look that I saw against Minnesota, that I've seen everywhere except for the Seattle game. But that's everything was kind of rolling in our favor.
Mm-hmm.
And we still only had 23 points by the offense. We scored 29, but that was on a blocked field goal.
Aren't you surprised at how well the defense is playing this early? This early. I didn't expect them to be top 10 defense, right? We're like 10th in defense right now. I didn't expect our defense to be. I'm not saying we're playing great.
No. I was trying to think.
I just didn't expect us to be holding teams. I mean, we held Cincinnati to what did we hold? 17 points.
Well, 17, but it was really 10. Yeah. It was really 10.
But the defense can get better, but I thought the secondary would be struggling way more than it's struggling right now.
Well, I think that's what's even more surprising to me is that it's not just that the defense is playing the way that it is, but kind of the way that they got there. We are getting sacks, but let's be honest, we kind of got them in bunches against Cleveland, and we did get a bunch against Seattle. When we needed them against Washington, we didn't get the sacks, and when we needed them against Minnesota, we didn't get the sacks.
Right.
But our secondary and our overall coverage has managed to keep people out of the end zone which we knew was a massive weakness. So I'm more surprised that it's not that we're just dominating up front and covering.
Right. No, I agree.
Banks has been kind of hit or miss, and we've been just rotating guys out at the second quarterback spot. That's what's most surprising to me, is that they've really held it together schematically versus personnel.
So my point here is this, and then we really got to wrap this up. My point is this: is it's again, it's not the defense. We should absolve the defense of every sin. It's
Sure.
just that if you told me we were 2-4 at this point, I would have guessed, well, the defense is really struggling and we have problems with Daniel Jones still. But the defense hasn't been, we haven't given up more than I don't think we've given up more than 21 points in a game. So it
Yeah.
hasn't been terrible. It's been upper half of the league. We've been at the bottom of the league in defense. And the running game is but it's not bad. It's up and down, it's up and down. So I keep coming, it's the quarterback. I keep coming, it's the quarterback.
Well, I mean, you think three of the scores that we've given up, and it's not one of them is not defensive, but still, we've given up essentially three touchdowns. One, the pick six against Minnesota. Boom, there goes the touchdown that way. Two, the Cleveland game where we fumbled the kickoff. Yeah. So Cleveland has almost nowhere to go before they score. Boom, touchdown.
Great
and
fumble.
Then the fumble against Seattle returned for a touchdown. So, I mean, you're talking 21 points right there.
Right.
With a grand total of what? 17 offensive yards probably done during that. I mean, it's crazy to think about how much we've been keeping people out of the end zone, and the fact that we still lost 4 games because we just can't get in the end zone.
Well, and we thought this was going to be I was really getting nervous again after the Commanders game, because I thought, oh my God, his bend but don't break defense is really bendy. I mean,
yeah. It's just...
But it hasn't been that way. It hasn't been a bend but don't break defense. So that was sort of the bad game. That's the game that left the worst taste in my mouth, because every drive they had. But since then, we've learned that Jaden Daniels is pretty darn good.
Right.
And the Commanders are a better team than we thought they were. I still think, like you do, I don't think Jaden's going to come back to earth, but I still think that surrounding talent. The problem with Jaden is if they start giving him better players in future drafts, then we've got a real problem in Washington. It's not going to be the Eagles. It's not going to be Cowboys. It's going to be Washington.
Right.
So anyways, we could go on and on about this. But.
Yeah. So anyway, this weekend will be interesting. This is one of those games though that's going to have it's going to basically be it's not going to be a footnote in the season book. It's going to be a chapter, and this is going to decide where this story goes. If we collapse and look really bad at home, and Saquon Barkley has a really big game, this is going to have deeper, ugly ramifications going forward. Mm-hmm. You potentially lose the locker room if you're Daboll, if Jones struggles a lot, and the defense, let's say we keep Philadelphia to less than 10 points for a good portion of the game, and we haven't scored. You're going to lose the locker room if you don't start going, I got to do something. Just even if it's just to give somebody a kick in the pants, even if you blame everybody else but the quarterback, the fact of the matter is it's the quarterback that's the focal point. That's why Eli Manning was being pulled and Geno Smith was being put in. It wasn't because Geno Smith was a better quarterback than Eli Manning. Yeah. They just felt they had to do something different.
If Saquon goes off, we don't score more than 10 points. And Daboll at the end of the game is saying, we've all got to do better, including myself.
Yeah, you might not want to keep saying that.
I don't know. This thing could spiral. So it just seems odd. You're saying this is a pivotal point, and I was thinking back what you were saying, and you're right. But I was thinking back, well, last week was pivotal. The week before that was pivotal. So every week now is probably pivotal. But you're right in this sense. You hit the nail on the head earlier when you said the Barkley thing. So we've come full circle. We started with Barkley and with Barkley. But you're right. Barkley could be like the nail in the coffin here for something.
This is Shane's big deal. Yeah. This is Shane's big deal.
But I will say this: regardless of what happens, you're not going to hear me say they should have kept him. I'm not going to do that. I said this could happen. I said he probably will have a really good year, but it's the right decision.
And I know you said this. I know I definitely said this. I was all for us trading Barkley in 22 while we were winning
Yeah,
because
and
I knew he wasn't going to
that was
stay.
not, but that would have been we would have gotten a first round pick for him. I'm sure we would have gotten a first round pick from a playoff team then. Yeah, he was having a monster first half of 2020.
And the smartest football move would have been to do that. You would have assessed where you were. You would know that the bulk of your roster is not, and we knew this going in, was not the guys you wanted in 23 and 24. They were the guys you had now to get by. Barkley was the guy you weren't going to build around a running back that's already been proven.
They would have gotten crucified though. They were 6-2,
and that's fine. And
they
that's
were so. And again, them winning in 2022 actually backfired on them. If he had the monster first half and they were at 500 or worse, then it would have been a no-brainer to trade him. But they would have gotten crucified by the fans, by the media.
true.
People would have been going, "What are you doing?"
But they're still getting that even after the fact when they lost and they let him go. The other thing, though, what I will say, and I'll give credit to a couple, I'm not going to name them. They get too much credit as it is already.
But
there are a number.
Name them.
There are a number. No, well, I mean, there's people. There's people. I'm talking about people on Twitter. There's some media.
Oh,
people.
Twitter. Okay.
There's some media. There's some media people that get.
Okay.
They say enough of this stuff already, but there are people on BBI that will say pretty much the same thing. They assess the winning in two pieces: the first 8 games, the playoff win in Minnesota. After the first 8 games, we were 3-5-1.
Not good. Not good.
So,
and we had injury issues that made it worse, but it was not a good roster.
But the injury issues were happening to people that we weren't counting on beyond that year anyway, and it was guys that came.
You had Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson.
Well, there was that one. There was that one. But Jackson was already kind of like nobody was happy with him to begin with as it was. But our offensive line was complete crap. I mean, we were just meshing, throwing people together. Yeah. It got even worse in 23, amazingly enough. Yeah. But the point is, they assessed it in the wrong segment. They said, here's what we were winning. We won a playoff game. We had stretch where things didn't go. And I think the McKinney thing became an excuse. Oh, we lost some games because of McKinney. That's probably true to a degree, but we weren't a good team. Right. So and then you doubled down. You didn't trade them. And then you franchised them. And then you signed Jones. And those two things together, I will always say, have been tied at the hip. We should have kept one or the other, but not both. And we did, and we tied into a big contract. Anyway, we're way past that.
Yeah.
But if the chance comes up now that you can make moves, even if we beat Philadelphia, if someone offers me a late second or a third for Darius Slayton, I'm taking it. If I get a third or fourth round pick, which it's been hypothesized by, it was a media guy, that the Lions might be willing to throw that out there for Ojulari.
I would take that in a heartbeat. If they can get a 4th round pick for Ojulari right now, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Take it.
But people are going to be like, then who do you have? And I said, I don't care. I don't care if we have 3 wins versus 5 wins. That doesn't make any difference.
Well, and I say this to that question. When same as like, oh, you're going to trade Slayton. Who do you have? Okay, how many wins do we have right now with Slayton?
Right. And those
what are we losing?
Are walking. They're both walking. Everyone's got to understand that they're gone, unless the only exception, Ojulari's gone. Period. The only way Slayton comes back is if they do a new contract with him right now before the
season
before he leaves, and they've decided Hyatt's not it, and we're not going to spend another draft pick. But that would be sort of saying we're happy with Slayton as our second wide receiver. And I've never gotten the sense that they were overly happy. People got to remember Slayton in Daboll's first year. Slayton was on the bubble.
He was on his way out.
He was on his way out. He was like the 7th on the depth chart. We weren't even sure he was going to make the team. He came back kind of out of nowhere. That doesn't mean he can't redeem himself, but I never got the sense that they were all in on Slayton.
People forget in that last preseason game of 22, we were playing the Jets. We were playing almost all backups. Slayton played in that game. Yeah. And there was thought it sounded like he was going to be cut. And then all of a sudden they kind of redid a lower deal. They cut his number and he stayed longer. he'll get more money. So and then we'll call it.
Yeah, we're way over.
We're way over, but you know what? You get talking, and that's the way things go. He will get way more money in the offseason on a contract, but we will get more in a potential return right now if we trade him. So he's not going to, unless we sign him, he's not signing with us in the offseason. There's no way we would give him what another team will get him.
If he hits free agency, he's not coming back.
Because another team will pay him because it's funny money. I could give you the contract, but there's only so much of it guaranteed. The Giants aren't going to guarantee a big amount of money for Darius Slayton. You've got Neighbors, you've got Wandell, Hyatt, who knows? But either way, we'll go get other guys that can backfill that other spot. You're not going to pay Slayton to be a guy who's been on, and I don't want to pay guys that have been on losing teams over and over and over again. Yeah. There's a thing about losing mentality, just kind of, it's there. Yeah. Move them, let them go. So I would trade him.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note,
we'll wrap it up. So we both kind of think it's probably going to be a 30-13, something like that. Eagle victory. I hope not, but let's see. It's a big deal. And like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll follow this up next week. But Eric, good luck this weekend. Hopefully we have some enjoyment and maybe, just maybe, we win, but let's just not be embarrassed.
Yeah. And if they do win, then stop taking our predictions seriously, because it means we're terrible at them. So
yeah, or I'm just going to predict that if they win, I'm predicting they lose every other game this rest of this year. Just understand that's where I'm going to go with this. So, all right. So we appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch up with you again coming next week.